Hello, chapter 18. So what happened at the end of the last one? Seems like Dave's getting into more and more trouble, doesn't it? That's probably because he's not telling the truth and being honest, which is what he should have done. Owned up, fessed up. But I'm glad he didn't go out into the streets and at night time, because that would be incredibly dangerous. Then he was trying to hide the new lot of maggots. I don't know why they keep posting him maggots. And there you go. And then his sister was mean to him, as usual, at the end there. So, chapter 18. Going to school was so embarrassing. Mum drove me there. All the way to school, I kept wondering what I could do to pretend to people that she wasn't actually taking me to school like an infant, but just giving me a lift on her way to somewhere else. I thought through the things I could shout out as she drove off, like, "Thanks for the lift, Mum. Lucky you were on your way to the supermarket." But what would I shout when she dropped me off again the next day or the day after? That's probably because lots of children walk to school if you live close to your school. Obviously, a lot of you got to get the bus, or your parents have to drive you there because it's quite far from the centre of Valencia to Puthol. I remember I used to walk to school every day when I was in primary school. But then I had to get a bus when I was in secondary school because it was a different school. Right, the journey was made even worse because Aunt Dora said she wanted a lift into town, which meant we were 15 minutes late leaving because of her checking everything twice. Like she had got a purse with her, had she? Yes, she had. Did she have her shopping list? Did she? Yes, she did, and so on. As a result, we got caught up in traffic and I was going to be late. At one point, when we were sitting in a traffic jam and going nowhere, I suggested to Mum that it would be quicker for me to get out and walk. But Mum insisted that she wanted to see me actually go in. I pointed at the clock, which showed 5 minutes to 9. Normally, school starts at 9 o'clock or earlier in the UK. "I'm going to be in trouble for being late," I told Mum, "and it's not my fault." Mum just scowled and ground her teeth, looked at Aunt Dora, who was sitting in the back seat in the rear view mirror, and ignored me. Then she said, "Now, you're not to get into any trouble today. I told Miss Moore to phone me and let me know if you do anything wrong." "I won't," I assured her. Well, except for being late for school. Once again, Mum ignored the complaint. "And you're not going to have anything to do with that boy, Bates," she added. "I can't help it," I said. "He sits at the same table as me in class." "Miss Moore said she's going to move you to another table," Mum said. Well, that cheered me up a bit. Being on the same table as Banga was always a nightmare. He was always trying to kick me and the other kids underneath the table. Luckily, because he wasn't very coordinated, he usually ended up kicking himself. But sometimes he got me. We got out of the traffic jam and almost straight away ended up in another. Mum would never know that I nearly ran away. Instead of taking me to school today, she and Dad could have been holding a press TV conference begging me to return home. But then I wondered if they would have. Neither of them had noticed my absence. If I had started walking last night instead of crawling into Fred's kennel, I would have been miles and miles away by now, and they wouldn't have known. But because nobody had bothered to come into the attic room to talk to me. They hadn't come in to say goodnight. They hadn't even come in to tell me off. They just ignored me. I was the invisible boy. I think he's feeling a little bit sorry for himself, don't you? Finally, we reached the school. We were 5 minutes late. Mum pulled up in a sort of parking area nearly opposite the school. You don't have to sit here and watch me go in, I appealed to her. I'm not going to, she said. I brightened up. Only a few kids would see that my mum had brought me to school. Phew. But her next words sent a chill right through me. I'm coming into the school with you. What? I stared at her in shock. Why? Because I need to explain to Miss Moore why you're late this morning, she said. Again, she shot a look of annoyance into the rearview mirror at Aunt Dora. And I said I was going to take you to school, and that is exactly what I am going to do. She got out. I noticed that Aunt Dora was also getting out of the back of the car. There's no need for you to come, Dora, said Mum. Yes, there is, said Dora. If I'm left alone in a car, it could get hijacked, or a lorry might hit it, or vandals might come along and attack it, or... Oh, I don't have time for this, sighed Mum, wearily. All right, come in. As the three of us walked in through the school gates, my heart sank. On one level, it was good that everyone had already gone in, because no one saw me being brought to school by my mum and aunt. But on the other hand, we would be walking in just as some of the classes would be passing through the reception area on their way to assembly. That meant that someone would see me, and word would soon spread. Dave Dickens was brought to school by his mum and his dad. Oh, and his aunt. So when they're in year 6, they think they're all grown up, don't they, some people, and they don't want to be brought in by their mums or dads. As I followed Mum into the school building, I felt a sharp pain on the top of my head. I turned round. Aunt Dora was hiding something in her handkerchief. She'd pulled a piece of hair so she could get it tested for drugs. She pulled a bit of his hair out. I wanted to say something sharp to Mum about this, but was already on her way along the corridor to my classroom. I followed her. But then I saw our class's science display and my model brain. I stopped dead in horror. Oh, the jelly had melted. My model brain was just a wobbly shape, a lump of pink on a plate, sitting in a squidgy, wet pink liquid. Oh, I croaked and pointed at my model in shock. Aunt Dora leapt back. What? She babbled, looking out in alarm. My brain has melted, I burst out. Help! shrieked Aunt Dora. It's the drugs! They've melted his brain! As she began to back away from me towards our science display table. For a second, I was baffled. Then I realised what she meant. She thought that I'd taken so many drugs that my real brain had melted. No, I tried to explain. My brain on the table. And I moved forward, pointing at the science table behind her. Don't you come near me, she shrieked in panic. Help! He's high on drugs. I put on my most sincere face and moved towards the table to show her that I was talking about my melted model brain. Ah! Yelled Aunt Dora. She jumped back and landed right on the science display, tipping the table up. My model brain, now mostly squidgy pink jelly and liquid, rolled off its plate and landed on the floor by her feet, and quite a bit of it going on her shoes. Yuck! Aunt Dora squealed, trying to get out of the way, but her feet slipped in the sloppy jelly and she began to fall. Frantically, she grabbed at something to stop her from falling, and her clutching hands caught hold of Paul's moving mobile of the universe. Down she went onto the floor, taking Paul's model with her and most of the rest of the stuff on the display table. There was a bang as she landed on the big balloon that Paul had used to depict the sun, and the balloon disappeared into a tiny shrivel, a tiny piece of rubber. By now, all this shouting had brought everyone out of their classes to see what was going on. What they saw was Aunt Dora sitting in a puddle of wet pink jelly with a load of different coloured balls on string hanging around her neck and shoulders, and other pieces of our science display scattered all around her. "Oh, my model of the universe!" came an anguished cry. Paul was looking in horror at his wrecked model. The rest of my class and Miss Moore and my mum were standing with him, goggling at the scene. Goggling's like... Mum was the first to recover. "Dave," she barked angrily. "It wasn't me," I protested. "I didn't do anything." At that moment, one of the glass display jars containing Suki's insects fell off the table and landed just by Aunt Dora and broke. A cockroach came out and began to climb on Aunt Dora's knee. Her scream made everyone in the whole school take cover with their hands over their ears. So Suki had real live cockroaches in her glass jar for her display. Can you picture the scene? Well, there's a little picture so you can have a little look at that. Aunt Dora has made a bit of a mess of things and embarrassed herself somewhat. Factoid: cockroaches. A cockroach can live for up to a month after losing its head, but then it will die of thirst. They are rather robust creatures, aren't they? Rather strong creatures. Remember, there was something earlier on in the book saying that they can withstand nuclear radiation, so even if a nuclear bomb went off further away than actually landing on them and hitting them, but they would survive that. Tough cookies. I looked at Mum. If you hadn't insisted on bringing me to school, none of this would have happened, I pointed out. Mum glowered at me as if it was still all my fault. "We'll talk about this later, Dave," she said, "when I come and get you after school." Then she grabbed Aunt Dora by the elbow and hauled her to her feet. "Come on, Dora," she said. "I think it's time we left." And that's the end of chapter 18. What a mess, and what a lot of fuss and bother. Aunt Dora, maybe she won't be scared of insects so much now. Who knows? I'm not so sure though. Bye.